Night falls on the African savanna. There are no headlights, no distant cities glowing on the horizon, no orange wash of sodium street lamps, no screens, no phones. When the sun drops, the world doesn't dim, it disappears. Somewhere out in that darkness, a small group of early humans, our ancestors, are curled together under a rocky overhang. Their bodies are thin, tougher than ours, but still small compared to the life around them. The air cools quickly. The warmth of the day bleeds away from the ground. Wind moves through the tall grass, and every shifting shadow might be something with claws and teeth. They can hear the world long before they can see it. The low rumble of distant thunder, the long rising wail of hyenas, the coughing roar of a lion. Eyes strain into the black, but vision fails them. At night, these early humans are almost blind. Their hands, their tools, their intelligence, all the things that make them different, are suddenly not enough. In the dark, they are prey again. Once in a while, the sky tears open. A bolt of lightning rips down onto the plain. For a heartbeat, everything is visible. The stalks of grass, the outline of trees, the glittering river, the terrified faces turned upwards, and sometimes, when lightning meets dry brush, something new appears on the horizon, a jagged, flickering wound of light. Fire. For most of Earth's history, fire belongs entirely to the planet itself, to storms, to volcanoes, to accidents of heat and chance. It is wild, unpredictable, beautiful, and deadly. Our ancestors know fire as something to fear. It burns landscapes, chases away game, sends them fleeing. But it also does something else. It draws their eyes. It pulls them closer. One night, one group of early humans will walk toward that strange light instead of away from it. And when they do, when human hands reach out toward a burning branch and refuse to let go, the history of technology begins. To understand what fire really meant, we have to imagine life without it. Imagine being human, without sharp claws, without thick fur, without powerful jaws. We are a fragile animal, built for thinking, not fighting. Our natural weapons are pitiful compared to a big cat, a wolf, or even a baboon. In the daylight, intelligence can make up the difference. Early humans can organize hunts, share food, read tracks in the dirt, and work together in ways no other species can. In the daylight, the mind becomes a tool, and it works. But when the sun goes down, all of that advantage shrinks. Night is a reset button. The savanna at night is ruled by senses we don't have. The smell of predators on the wind, the shimmer of movement in near darkness, the ultrasonic calls of bats, the silent glide of owls, the nocturnal eye-shine of hunters that can see where we can't. Without fire, our ancestors survived the night through caution and numbers. They hid. They climbed. They huddled together. They waited for dawn. Their world was carved into two domains: the day when humans could act, explore, experiment, and the night when humans could only endure. Technology, at its core, is a way of bending the terms of that deal. It is our stubborn refusal to accept the limits the environment gives us. Before fire, early technology is mostly physical: a sharp stone, a shaped stick, a broken bone used as a tool. Useful, yes, but all of them depend entirely on the light. You can't nap flint in total darkness. You can't coordinate a hunt if you can't see each other. In that sense, before fire, even the earliest tools are half-finished. They only operate in the safest half of the day. Fire changes that. Fire turns the night from an enemy into a negotiable territory. It doesn't erase danger, but it pushes it back. It creates a halo of safety and warmth, a small bubble where human minds can still work after the sun disappears. For a creature like us, a fragile body attached to an ambitious brain, that small bubble is everything. When we talk about technology, we often think of objects: a phone, a car, a computer chip, things we can hold or plug in or tap on. But the first great technology wasn't an object at all. It was a relationship. Fire already existed on Earth long before humans. What changed was not the invention of fire, but the decision to stay close to it, to carry it, to feed it, to keep it alive when nature would have let it die. At some point in deep prehistory, a group of humans, or their ancestors, did something no other animal had ever done. They interfered with a fundamental force of nature and made it a partner. That is the birth of technology as we will define it in this series. Technology is the deliberate harnessing of natural forces to extend human abilities. Fire extended our ability to see, to stay warm, to protect ourselves, to cook, to reshape landscapes, to transform materials, to gather together. Almost everything that would come later, metal, engines, electricity, rockets, and eventually artificial intelligence, sits on top of that first decision. We will not simply live in nature. We will cooperate with its forces and redirect them. Fire is more than a tool. It is a mirror held up to the human condition. It shows us how small we are, how easily we can be burned, but also how fiercely we want agency. Once we learned to keep fire, we stopped being just another animal hiding from the storm. We became something else, a species that negotiates with the universe. For the archaeologist, fire appears as darkened soil in an ancient cave, as charcoal embedded in layers of sediment, as bone fragments altered by heat. These traces tell us when and where humans started to change their relationship to the world. For the philosopher, fire is a symbol of knowledge, of power, of stolen secrets. Prometheus, punished for bringing fire to humanity. Burning bushes, sacred flames, ritual bonfires. Across cultures and ages, we keep returning to the same image. A small group of humans gathered around a flame, trying to understand what it means. And for us in this series, for Grant Town, for anyone trying to imagine the future of civilization, fire is the first case study. The first time we reached into the raw forces of the world and said, stay with us, serve us, change us. This is where the history of technology begins. Not with metal, not with machines, not with microchips. It begins on a cold night with frightened humans edging closer to something that could easily kill them, and deciding that the risk of getting burned was worth the chance to transform their lives. If fire is humanity's first technology, then a natural question follows. When did we first learn to control it? You might imagine this moment as a single discovery. One spark, one genius ancestor, one tribe that suddenly figured it all out. But the real story is far more layered, far more gradual, and far more uncertain. Archaeology doesn't give us clear answers, it gives us clues. Blackened sediments, fractured stones, burned bones, scattered across continents and separated by almost unimaginable stretches of time. One of the earliest pieces of evidence comes from Kubi Fora in Kenya. There, researchers found patches of reddened earth, soil heated to temperatures far above what sunlight alone could produce. These sediments are about 1.6 million years old, but were they human fires or the remains of a natural brush fire? The same question arises at Chesawanja, also in Kenya. Another site, another possibility, but not a confirmation. Then, in Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, we find something different. Ash, burned bone fragments, heat-altered plant remains, and all of it roughly 1 million years old. Here, fire wasn't a passing flame. It was used inside a cave, which strongly suggests deliberate handling. Nature doesn't usually burn things in caves. Someone brought fire there. The pattern continues at Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel, dating to around 790,000 years ago. Charcoal, burned flint tools, seeds and grasses altered by controlled heating, and crucially, fire in multiple distinct locations, as if a settlement maintained several hearths at once. These are not the remains of wildfire, these are the fingerprints of intention. When you lay out the evidence on a timeline, a surprising picture emerges. Humans, or human ancestors, may have been using fire for nearly 1 million years before we ever developed agriculture, writing, or cities. Fire, in other words, is older than civilization itself. But the exact date when humans crossed the threshold from fear to mastery, from avoidance to deliberate use, remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Why is it so hard to know when our ancestors first controlled fire? The difficulty lies in the nature of fire itself. It destroys what it touches. It leaves behind ambiguous traces. And time, millions of years of erosion, burial, shifting sediments, further blurs the evidence. When archaeologists excavate an ancient site, they're not finding campfires neatly surrounded by stones. They're finding fragments of fragments, carbonized flecks, heat-cracked rocks, soil that looks just a little too red. The challenge is that natural fires can produce many of the same signatures. A wildfire can sweep through a landscape, burning animal bones or altering soil chemistry, and then disappear without leaving a clear boundary. Distinguishing intentional fire from natural fire requires context. Is the ash concentrated in one small area or dispersed across terrain? Are there modified tools mixed with the burned material? Is the burning inside a shelter, a cave, or a location unlikely to catch fire on its own? These subtleties are the puzzle pieces archaeologists must assemble. And as scientific techniques improve, from microscopic analysis to magnetism testing to sediment chemistry, sites once dismissed as natural may be reevaluated. That shifting understanding explains why our timeline keeps changing. Every decade seems to push the mastery of fire deeper into the past. But the deeper the timeline pushes, the more profound the question becomes. How early did human intelligence begin to diverge? When did our species stop adapting to nature and begin adapting nature to us? If we follow the archaeological clues, cautiously but clearly, one candidate stands above the rest: Homo erectus. Tall, long-limbed, wide-ranging. The first human ancestor to truly leave Africa in large numbers, expanding into the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. Homo erectus had smaller brains than us, but far larger than any species before them. Their bodies were built for endurance, their hands were capable of precise manipulation, and their social structures appear to have been more complex. They were, in every meaningful sense, a technological species, and it is during their era, between 1.6 million and 700,000 years ago, that controlled fire first begins to appear in the archaeological record. Controlling fire would have required several skills. Recognizing the value of flames, overcoming instinctual fear, transporting burning branches without extinguishing them, feeding a fire with fuel. Keeping it alive overnight, no other animal does this. Even species that occasionally use tools, chimpanzees, crows, some marine mammals, have never been seen to preserve or manipulate fire in any sustained way. The leap from observing fire to controlling it may have taken centuries or thousands of years, but once it happened, it fundamentally rewrote the human relationship to danger, to energy, and to the environment. For archaeologists, the first hearth marks the boundary between creature and innovator. For civilization, it marks the beginning of mastery. And for our species story, it marks the first time nature gave us a gift, and we chose not to run from it, but to carry it forward. When we think of fire's impact on humanity, we often imagine the obvious: warmth, light, protection. But its most dramatic effect may have occurred on the inside, in our biology, in our metabolism, in the very architecture of our brains. There's a theory in anthropology known as the cooking hypothesis, championed by primatologist Richard Wrangham. It proposes something astonishing. Cooking made us human. Long before agriculture, before writing, before stone architecture, our ancestors were already transforming the nutritional landscape through heat. Raw plants and raw meat are difficult to digest. They demand enormous chewing, long processing times, and large digestive tracts. Cooking softens food, breaks cell walls, and releases far more calories than raw diets. A cooked root vegetable could deliver double or triple the energy of a raw one. Cooked meat became easier to chew and far safer to eat. And that extra energy, it didn't go to height, it didn't go to muscle, it went to the brain. The human brain is an energy-hungry organ. Proportionally, it consumes far more calories than brains of similar-sized mammals. Without a dramatic increase in caloric efficiency, such a brain would be impossible to support. Fire made it possible. It freed up metabolic resources, it reduced the need for massive, energy-demanding guts. It allowed humans to shorten the time spent chewing and processing food. In essence, fire reallocated energy from the stomach to the skull. This wasn't an overnight change. It was evolution. Slow, incremental, but unstoppable once the benefits became clear. For hundreds of thousands of years, the humans who cooked their food had an enormous advantage. They survived more often, they reproduced more successfully. Their children grew stronger and smarter. Over generations, fire shaped not just what we ate, but who we became. With cooking came one of the most profound shifts in the evolution of our species. Our bodies changed, our minds expanded, our societies transformed. A smaller digestive system meant a lighter body plan, freeing our ancestors for longer journeys across the landscape. Hunting and foraging could go farther. Migration could span continents. Meanwhile, the brain grew. Larger prefrontal cortices, more complex neural networks, the beginnings of planning and abstraction. Our memory deepened. Our ability to conceptualize improved. The simple act of heating food reshaped our cognitive destiny. But it also did something else, something often overlooked. It introduced predictability into the human diet. Before fire, food was whatever you found. Berries here, a carcass there, roots if you could dig them, shellfish if you could reach them. Raw diets are ruled by variability. Cooked diets are ruled by agency. Once humans learned to cook, they gained control over nutrition, safety, and energy intake. They could soften hard foods, detoxify certain plants, and extend the edible range of their environment. The world became more edible and therefore more survivable. Fire also lengthened childhood. A longer childhood is one of humanity's defining traits, a period of vulnerability, but also intense learning. This extended developmental window supports cultural transmission, teaching skills, forming bonds, transferring knowledge. With fire, meals became social events. Children watched adults prepare food, share it, assign roles, tell stories. They learned not just how to cook, but why. Knowledge stopped being instinctual and became inherited. Around the hearth, teaching became possible on a scale no other species had ever known. Fire's impact on the human brain offers a deeper lesson, one that echoes through every technological revolution that followed. When we harness a new technology, we aren't just changing our tools, we are changing ourselves. Fire altered our biology. It gave us the energy to think more deeply, solve more problems, dream larger dreams. Technology isn't separate from the human story, it is the human story. We shape it, and it shapes us. Fire is the first example of this recursive loop. The first proof that when humans gain access to a more powerful source of energy, everything about our civilization transforms. In many ways, it mirrors the transitions that define modern life. Electricity reshaping the world in the 19th and 20th centuries. Nuclear power extending our reach even further, artificial intelligence today, promising to change not only how we work, but how we think. Each shift is a new version of the same ancient pattern. Technology expands our capacity and then demands that we grow into the new possibilities it creates. For early humans, fire was the first democratization of energy. It provided warmth, safety, and nourishment regardless of strength or status. A child and an elder benefited from the hearth just as much as the hunter or toolmaker. And that's where the philosophy of Grantown finds its earliest roots. The belief that technology should lift everyone, not just a select few. The first hearth was not exclusive. It was communal. It provided equally. It symbolized the idea that when humans gather around a shared source of power, survival improves for all. The challenge of our age, as we stand on the brink of artificial intelligence, is to preserve that ancient lesson. Fire made us human. What we do with today's technologies will decide what we become next. Long before cities, before temples, before villages or kingdoms or written laws, humans gathered around something else, something simple, flickering, alive. Fire. The hearth was the very first center of human social life. Not a physical structure, at least not in the beginning, but a gravitational force, a point around which bodies aligned, voices gathered, and minds synchronized. Think of what fire does to attention. Even today, when we stare at a campfire, our eyes soften, our breathing slows, we become still. We become listeners. Now imagine what fire must have meant to a species still learning its own identity. A group sitting together around a flame would have shared warmth, shared food, shared protection, shared awareness. And in the safety of that circle, something else emerged: conversation. Not the frantic communication of a hunt or the warning calls of danger, but something more reflective, more imaginative. Around the fire, early humans had time. They could look at each other. They could listen. They could begin to speak not just about what is, but about what might be. The hearth created the first real classroom, the first stage, the first council chamber. In the firelight, humanity didn't just survive. It began to articulate itself. Before fire, the day belonged to humans, but the night did not. Darkness was a realm of fear and vulnerability. Fire changed that. Suddenly, humans had a weapon against the night, not to conquer it, but to carve out a sanctuary within it. With fire, the day didn't end at sunset. It stretched, it expanded, it gave humans a new window of time, a time not devoted to foraging or hunting or fleeing, but to reflection. Anthropologists believe that many foundational aspects of culture emerged at night, illuminated by the soft orange halo of the hearth. What happens when a species gains extra hours with nothing urgent to do? Stories emerge, rituals develop, songs are created, myths take shape, and perhaps most importantly, communities strengthen. Fire didn't simply push back predators, it made room for imagination. It made room for identity. It made room for the possibility of shared purpose. In the quiet of the evening, while embers glowed and shadows danced, the human mind had the freedom to wander and wonder. These nighttime gatherings were likely the birthplace of symbolic thought, the ability to connect ideas, to imagine futures, to create meaning. Art historians often speak of caves as the first cathedrals, but the hearth is the first sanctuary, the first place where humans could safely dream. And around that shared flame, something even more remarkable occurred. Humans began to develop emotional cohesion. When you warm your hands beside someone else, when you eat from the same fire, when you sit together while predators growl beyond the circle of light, something binds you. Trust grows. Stories reinforce memory. Memory builds identity. A group that fears the night together survives together. A group that masters the night becomes something new. Over time, fire changed from a novelty into something more stable. A structure, a tradition, an anchor point in the landscape. Archaeology reveals some of the earliest fixed hearths, circular arrangements of stones, charcoal layers built up over repeated use, burned bones and seeds deposited over months or years. These are not random traces of lightning or natural brush fires. They are signs of repeated, intentional activity. Families or bands returning to the same spot, maintaining the same flame. A hearth, after all, must be tended. Fire needs fuel. Fire needs guardianship. Fire needs continuity. Early humans likely passed down the task of caring for the fire. Who collected the wood? Who protected it from rain? Who transported embers to new campsites? In this way, fire became the first cultural inheritance. Long before pottery, long before agriculture, long before writing systems, humans were already transmitting something fragile and precious across generations: the knowledge of how to keep the fire alive. This was not a trivial responsibility. Losing the fire meant losing warmth, safety, cooked food, and sometimes the very ability to survive a cold night. So communities built rituals around fire maintenance. The hearth became a symbol of continuity, of lineage, of identity. And in some cultures, it still is. The ancient Greeks carried embers from one generation of cities to the next. Many indigenous cultures preserve eternal flames as a sign of the community's endurance. Even today, we speak of hearth and home as if the fire itself were part of the family. The first hearths were not buildings, they were promises. A promise that humans could come together, survive together, and build something that lasted longer than any one individual. Fire did more than push back the night. It taught humans stability. It taught them tradition. It taught them how to gather, not just for warmth, but for meaning. Once early humans learned to control fire, the world itself began to open. Fire didn't just protect them or nourish them, it expanded the boundaries of what it meant to be human. With fire, cold climates were no longer barriers. Nights in unfamiliar terrains became survivable. Harsh winters could be endured, and new landscapes explored. The migration story of humanity, from the equatorial cradle of Africa to the mountains of Eurasia and the frozen edges of the world, owes its first possibility to fire. Archaeological evidence shows early humans living in regions far too cold for survival without heat. Fire hardened their resolve and softened the environment. It made the inhospitable merely challenging, and the challenging ultimately conquerable. And in this way, fire set a precedent that echoes throughout history. When humans harness energy, they expand their world. Fire also changed the relationship between humans and disease. Cooking killed parasites, neutralized toxins, and reduced bacterial load. Many foods that were once dangerous became staples. The digestive tract grew safer, the immune system faced fewer threats, and caloric reliability increased. This shift didn't just extend lifespan, it stabilized populations. It allowed groups to grow larger, to carry infants through harsh seasons, to survive droughts and migrations. Fire gave humans an advantage that no predator could match: consistency. A predictable source of heat, light and nutrition meant humans could endure environments where other species faltered, and once humans could endure them, they could inhabit them. The story of humanity spreading across continents begins here, with flames flickering against dark cave walls. Fire didn't only help humans endure predators, it reshaped the balance of power between them. For millions of years, humans lived among lions, leopards, hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and other formidable hunters. Before weapons were refined and social structures strengthened, humans were far from the top of the food chain. Fire altered that equation. A burning branch waved in the air could stop an advancing predator. A circle of flames could protect a sleeping group. An ember carried to a new site could guarantee safety the moment night fell. With fire, humans became unpredictable. No longer just soft, slow primates, but creatures with a portable force of nature at their command. Animals that once approached humans with confidence now learned caution. For the first time, humans inspired fear without brute strength. For the first time, the environment wasn't dictating the terms, humans were. But fire didn't only reshape physical danger, it changed how humans understood danger at the spiritual and symbolic level. Across cultures, from indigenous Australian peoples to the San of Southern Africa to the earliest Proto-Indo-European societies, fire takes on a sacred dimension, not because it is mystical, but because it is powerful and rare. Something that gives life and takes it, something that comforts and destroys, something that must be learned and respected, not merely used. In the myths of countless societies, fire is carried, tended, guarded, stolen, or gifted. It is never trivial. It is always a story of boundary crossing between the natural and the human, the divine and the earthly, the safe and the dangerous. Through fire, humans confronted the unknown not with surrender, but with engagement. They didn't flee the dark, they negotiated with it. One of the most surprising truths about early humans is this: they reshaped ecosystems long before agriculture. Controlled burning, what some indigenous cultures call fire stick farming, was practiced across Australia for tens of thousands of years. Humans used fire to clear brush, renew vegetation, stimulate the growth of edible plants, and create favorable hunting grounds. These weren't accidental burns, they were deliberate, purposeful. They altered entire landscapes, and similar practices likely occurred across Africa, Southeast Asia, and parts of Europe. Humans learned that fire could reset an ecosystem, creating a mosaic of habitats that supported more game, more plant diversity, and more predictable food sources. Fire became the first ecological tool, a way to intervene in the environment not just for immediate survival, but for long-term strategy. This early environmental management reveals a profound truth often forgotten in modern debates about humanity's place in nature. We have always been shapers of landscapes. The idea of a purely untouched wilderness rarely reflects actual human history. Humans have been influencing ecosystems for hundreds of thousands of years, often in sustainable, cyclical ways that worked in harmony with natural regeneration. Fire makes this explicit. It shows humans didn't wait until agriculture to experiment with long-term planning. The seeds of environmental engineering were present in the Paleolithic era, illuminated by the glow of the hearth. In many ways, these practices were the earliest form of proto-agriculture, small-scale, controlled interventions in ecosystems designed to benefit human communities. Fire, therefore, wasn't only a survival tool. It was the first instrument of landscape design, the first expression of human intention on the natural world. And as we will see throughout this series, each time humans gain access to a more powerful form of energy, fire, steam, electricity, fission, and now computation, the scope of that intention expands. Once humans mastered fire, something remarkable happened. They began to experiment. Fire was no longer just a source of warmth or light. It became a laboratory, a place where materials behaved differently, a space for cause and effect. One of the earliest and simplest examples is the fire hardening of wooden spears. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans learned to hold the tips of wooden weapons near the flame, allowing the heat to drive out moisture, increase stiffness, and improve penetration strength. This discovery might seem small compared to the later developments of metallurgy or engines, but it was revolutionary. It meant that humans had moved beyond merely using the environment. They were modifying it. Wood, in its natural state, was not enough. So fire transformed it. This is the first glimmer of materials science. The first time humans asked, what happens if we change the properties of a material by applying controlled energy? It is a question that echoes down through pottery, metalworking, chemistry, engineering, and ultimately the computers we build today. Fire didn't just harden spears, it hardened human curiosity. When a species learns that nature can be coaxed, reshaped, improved, a new mindset is born. Not just adaptation, but innovation. From hardened spears, the next great leap came from a different kind of curiosity. What happens when you heat clay? Humans learned, through accident or observation, that clay left near the fire would transform. It hardened. It kept its shape. It became waterproof. This was the birth of ceramics, one of humanity's oldest and most durable technologies. Ceramics meant storage. Ceramics meant transport. Ceramics meant cooking vessels, symbolic objects, early trade goods. With ceramics came the first kilns, an escalation from open flame to enclosed structures capable of maintaining high, consistent temperatures. These kilns were the original ancestors of industrial furnaces, ovens, and smelting chambers. And with them came another discovery. Materials change in predictable ways under heat. This insight, that energy applied to matter yields transformation, is the philosophical heart of all future technology. It is the logic behind forging iron, refining silicon, building rocket engines, and manufacturing microchips. It all begins here. Clay plus fire equals something new, something better, something that endures. The pyrotechnic revolution didn't happen overnight, it unfolded slowly across thousands of years. But its implications were sweeping. Fire gave humans not only new tools, but a new worldview. Nature was not fixed, it was improvable. And once you believe that, civilization becomes inevitable. If we follow the chain reaction far enough, we begin to see fire not just as one tool among many, but as the parent technology of all future industries. Take metallurgy. Smelting ore into metal requires heat, far more heat than an open flame can provide. But the logic came from the same place. Apply fire to a material and witness its transformation. By building larger, hotter, more controlled fires, humans unlocked entirely new categories of tools. Copper, bronze, iron, steel. Each metal gave rise to new economies, new forms of warfare, new agricultural systems, new architectural possibilities. Entire eras of human history, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, are named after materials born from fire. Fire also underlies early engineering. The earliest engines were essentially enclosed fires that produced expanding gases. These proto-engines eventually evolved into steam engines, internal combustion engines, and the turbines that power modern electricity grids. Even today, most of the world's electricity, from coal plants to natural gas to nuclear reactors, relies on heat to generate power. Fire is still with us. It simply hides behind metal walls and industrial systems. The flame that once flickered in a Paleolithic cave now drives networks, illuminates cities, and connects continents. Technologically speaking, we never stopped tending the fire. We just learned to scale it. When we look at the arc of human innovation, from pottery to silicon wafers, from the first hearth to the Large Hadron Collider, a single truth emerges. Every technology that followed owes something to fire. Fire taught us transformation. Fire taught us experimentation. Fire taught us that the natural world could be reconfigured to meet human needs. It was the first domino to fall in a sequence that spans 1,000,000 years. Without fire, there is no metallurgy. Without metallurgy, no machinery. Without machinery, no electricity. Without electricity, no computers. Without computers, no artificial intelligence. The lineage of innovation traces back to that flickering glow on the savannah, the moment humans reached toward danger and pulled a future from the flames. Long before humans forged metal or built cities, they forged something else: stories. And almost everywhere those stories appear, fire is at the center of them. Fire is universal, not just physically but culturally. Whether in the myths of the Greeks, the rituals of the Sand People of southern Africa, the Vedic hymns of ancient India, or the oral traditions of the indigenous Americas, fire holds a position that no other natural element occupies. It is alive without being alive. It moves like a creature. It consumes and transforms. Humans recognize this dual nature early on. Fire is both familiar and unknowable. too dangerous to hold, yet too valuable to abandon. No other force in nature invited such intimacy and required such caution. That paradox, something that can warm you or kill you, protect you or destroy everything you own, made fire a natural vessel for meaning. In ancient Greece, the Titan Prometheus steals fire from the gods and gives it to humanity. In Hindu tradition, Agni, the fire god, is the divine messenger, carrying offerings between the mortal world and the heavens. Among many indigenous American cultures, fire is a teacher, a bringer of order to chaos, a purifier. In Zoroastrian temples, sacred fires have burned continuously for centuries, tended with care, symbolizing purity and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. And in Christianity and Judaism, fire conveys revelation, from the burning bush to the tongues of flame at Pentecost. These stories and symbols emerge across continents and eras, created by civilizations that never met one another. And yet the theme repeats: fire is the threshold between human and divine, something greater than us, yet entrusted to us. That duality, creation and destruction, lies at the heart of how fire shaped the human imagination. Other tools humans invented were predictable. A stone blade cuts, a rope binds, a basket holds. Fire is different. Once ignited, it has a will of its own. It dances, shifts, flickers, leaps. It consumes but also cleanses. It destroys forests but brings new growth. It creates safety and invites danger. Human beings have always sensed this tension. The earliest myths reflect a psychological truth. Mastering fire required both courage and humility. Sitting around a hearth meant trusting something that could kill you. Feeding a flame meant acknowledging that you were caring for something with agency, something that needed to be watched, respected, tended. In that sense, fire was humanity's first partnership with the force of nature. Not domination, not submission, but cooperation. A relationship that demanded responsibility. This tension carried moral weight. Fire asked humans to be careful, to be wise, to be aware of consequences. A careless ember could destroy a shelter, a forest, a community. A well-managed flame could sustain life for months. In myth, this responsibility becomes cosmic. Fire is often portrayed as a gift, a test, or a sacred trust. And in many traditions, misusing fire, or taking it for granted, has severe consequences. Fire became a symbol for something deeper, the idea that power must be paired with wisdom, a lesson woven into human storytelling from the very beginning of civilization. When we talk about fire as our first technology, we often focus on what it did for our bodies, cooking food, warming shelters, protecting us. But fire did something just as important for our minds. It created a space for meaning. Sitting in the circle of firelight, humans experienced something new, a sense of control within a world of chaos. For most of evolutionary history, life was reactive. Survival depended on immediate responses to hunger, danger, weather, predators. Fire changed this dynamic. With fire, humans could plan. They could stay awake after sunset and think about the next day, instead of simply enduring the present moment. They could create rituals and ceremonies. They could imagine gods, spirits, ancestors, and futures. Fire created the emotional and psychological landscape where symbolic thought could flourish. This is where technology and spirituality intersect. The hearth was not just a tool, it was a site of introspection. Firelight creates contrast. It illuminates faces and throws shadows on walls. It invites storytelling, reflection, and interpretation. It reveals just enough of the world to make us curious about what lies beyond its circle. Even today, humans gather around candlelight at vigils, bonfires on holidays, flames in sacred rituals. Not because we need the heat, but because fire still symbolizes connection, continuity, and reflection. The spark that once transformed wood into embers also transformed the human interior world, our sense of wonder, fear, purpose, and destiny. Fire is the first reminder that technology is never only physical. It shapes our inner life. It rewrites how we see ourselves and our place in the universe. It prepares us for the revolutions to come. Fire was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a chain reaction. Once humans understood that energy could transform materials, they began to wonder what else could be shaped, improved, or invented. Stone, for example, behaved differently when flaked near heat. Some rocks became easier to knapp, producing sharper and more uniform edges. A heated stone could fracture in predictable ways, allowing toolmakers to refine their craft. Fire wasn't just a source of comfort, it became an instructor. It revealed the hidden properties of the natural world. It taught early humans about brittleness, expansion, contraction, and chemical change long before those concepts had names. Fire turned the environment into a workshop. And in that workshop, the first complex toolkits emerged. Scrapers, awls, blades, spear points, each refined through generations of observation and experimentation. Slowly, humans began to leave behind the opportunistic scavenging of their ancestors and entered a new phase of intentionality. They weren't just adapting to nature, they were adapting nature to themselves. This shift from raw tools to fire-assisted craftsmanship marks the earliest steps toward what we might call technological thinking. A mindset that sees materials not as fixed, but as full of potential. Fire lit the first spark of that imagination. Once humans had reliable heat, their relationship to shelter changed. Without fire, shelters were temporary, used for a night, a storm, or a brief refuge. With fire, they became homes. In caves from South Africa to Spain, archaeologists find evidence of repeated hearths positioned in the same locations over thousands of years. The charcoal layers grow deeper. The fire pits become more defined. These hearths tell a story. Humans weren't just passing through, they were returning, season after season. The hearth gave a site meaning. It transformed a cave into a place of memory, a gathering point, a chosen refuge. Over time, this idea, that you could claim a place by anchoring fire within it, became foundational to human settlement. Camps became semi-permanent. Families grew around familiar landscapes. Generations passed down traditional living sites. Fire was the first technology that encouraged humans to stay, and staying is the seed of civilization. Fire also did something subtle but profound. It created time for thinking. Before fire, humans lived in a cycle dictated by daylight and immediate survival. Every hour was a negotiation with hunger, danger, or the elements. But with fire, humans had evenings, long stretches where immediate threats receded, and there was time to plan, reflect, and imagine. Planning is one of the cornerstones of human progress. The ability to ask, what will we hunt tomorrow? Where will we move next season? How can we build a better tool? What do we want to teach our children? These questions require mental space, and fire created that space. In this sense, the hearth was the first office, the first studio, the first laboratory of ideas. Humans learned to anticipate the future because fire gave them the time and safety to imagine one. As fire shaped human biology, culture, community, and imagination, it also paved the way for the next great leap in our technological journey. The rise of stone tools as deliberate, refined instruments of survival. Early humans had been using stones for millions of years, but once fire entered the picture, toolmaking accelerated. Caves with hearths often contain workshops, places where flakes of flint litter the ground, where toolmakers sat for hours shaping blades under the warm glow of the fire. Fire made those gatherings possible. It extended the workday, it illuminated the process. It created a communal environment where skills could be taught and improved collaboratively. In many ways, the first hearths were the first schools of craftsmanship. And so our journey moves naturally from fire to something fire made possible. Tools, deliberate, precise, crafted tools, the first extensions of the human body. In the next episode, we will explore how stone tools did more than cut wood or butcher animals. They transformed the human hand, reshaped the mind, created new social structures, and laid the foundation for everything from industry to art. If fire gave us warmth, tools gave us reach. And where fire illuminated the night, tools illuminated the path towards civilization. As we come to the end of this journey, from the darkness of the savannah to the glow of the first hearth, it's worth stepping back to see the larger picture. Fire was our first partnership with energy. And in many ways, every major technological era that came after reflects a new version of that same relationship. Electricity, for example, is simply fire tamed into wire. It heats our homes, lights our cities, and powers the rhythms of modern life. But behind the switch, behind the infrastructure, the logic is still ancient. Capture energy, shape it, redirect it. Use it to extend human possibility. Nuclear power takes this one step further, a civilization-scale flame, contained within steel and concrete, releasing heat at magnitudes our ancestors could hardly imagine. And today, we are entering another energy revolution, one not of heat but of information, the rise of artificial intelligence. It may feel strange to draw a line from a flickering ember to a neural network trained on billions of parameters, but the lineage is real. Fire gave us the calories to grow our brains. Tools gave us the precision to shape our world. Language gave us the ability to coordinate and imagine. The technologies of today, from satellites to quantum computers to AI systems, capable of generating, learning, and assisting, are not separate from these ancient forces. They are their descendants. They are the newest expressions of a relationship that began over 1 million years ago, when humans first reached toward the light instead of turning away. There's a guiding theme at the heart of our work here at Granttown. Technology should lift everyone, not just the strong, not just the wealthy, not just those with access. The hearth was the first example of shared technology. Everyone in the circle benefited from it. Children, elders, hunters, gatherers. Fire did not discriminate. It did not require ownership. It simply needed care. This is the model of technological stewardship that echoes into the present. Every major leap forward, from industrialization to electrification to the digital revolution, carries the same responsibility. Ensure that the benefits reach the many, not just the few. Fire teaches us that progress is communal. A flame kept alive by one feeds the warmth of all. And just as early humans learned to tend their hearths, we must learn to tend our modern technologies with wisdom, foresight, and a deep sense of shared purpose. The past reminds us that innovation is never neutral. It can create abundance or inequality, empowerment or exploitation. Fire asks us to choose carefully which future we ignite. So as we sit with this ancient story, the story of how humans transformed a wild force of nature into a companion, a teacher, a symbol, and a tool, we return to that first night on the savannah. A small group of early humans gathered around a fragile flame, protecting it from wind and darkness, not knowing that what they were keeping alive was nothing less than the spark of civilization itself. That flame would grow. It would become kilns and forges. It would become engines and grids. It would become rockets burning their way into orbit. It would become the glowing processors and screens we stare into today. Fire was the first technology, and in its light, humanity saw that the world could be changed. In our next episode, we will follow that light into the world of stone tools, the first deliberate extensions of the human body, and the foundation upon which all future craftsmanship is built. Until then, remember, the story of technology is the story of us, a species forever reaching toward the spark.